Hi, and welcome to IndieWire's Filmmaker Toolkit podcast. My name is Chris O'Falt. I'm the editor of the Toolkit, and my guest today is director Céline Sciamma, talking about her film, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This is a film that was supposed to come out in December, and it did have a teensy little limited release, but when France did not, and I think this was a mistake, when France did not pick it to be their entry for the Academy Awards, Neon the distributor decided that they would wait and do a big push for Valentine's Day, put it in more theaters, and it is. It's going to get out there, and it's just such an incredible film. Out of the Cannes Film Festival this year, there was really two things that you had to see, Parasite and this. So I hope you enjoy this podcast, but more importantly, please go see this film.
Well, when I started researching women painters throughout history of art, actually, not specifically at the 18th centuries at first, I just went throughout art history from the perspective of women, even going back to, I don't know, you say that in English, but the paintings in the caves,
Mm-hmm. Cave paintings,
yeah, where they would sign their drawings or their paintings with their hands, and when you look at the size of their hands, it might be teenagers or women. So I went throughout all art history, and just roughly, also because this book's not been written, and I discovered, of course, acknowledged the fact that there were always been women painter, but specifically at that time, right before the French Revolution, there was like this huge artistic scenery for women. There were hundreds of women painters, and I discovered their body of work, and it made me so melancholic and so emotional, because I felt, it was missing to art history, and the fact that it had been erased was kind of troubling and sad. But
where do you even see these? Where do you even see these works?
Well, you see them on the internet. Mm-hmm. You go from one painter to another, and then you look for archives. But it's mostly bad JPEGs, and you can see some of the work in the Louvre. But it's, very, very. It's a hunt. It's like a treasure hunt. Beyonce showed a lot of those women painters actually in the clip that she did in the Louvre. But I felt it was also missing to my life, to my personal life, that art is about also transmission of our intimacies, and as women we haven't been transmitted that at all. So of course it was about reconstitution and talking about the job of a woman artist at the time and the job of a woman artist at any time, actually. But it was also about transmitting, the hearts and the desires and the bodies, and giving back some presence and some present to these women, and doing the job that giving back, transmitting what hasn't been transmitted.
I rewatched the film last night because the first time it just washes over you like a big wave of emotion, and at least for me, any analytical thought is kind of out the window. But in rewatching it last night, I don't know if this is connected, please tell me if it's not, but one thing that I noticed is that as the love story is starting to happen, it's very carefully juxtaposed and kind of interwoven with the story of the three women. Mm-hmm. And this idea of, mom is gone, and there really is this relaxing. There is in this becoming themselves, and in one feels, although all the structure and all of, I guess for lack of a word, the patriarchy and society, but also societal structure is gone. In those scenes in the kitchen with the women, just laughing and learning and being more themselves, and the way that that's affecting the acting, it seems very specifically woven with the emergence of this very powerful love story that doesn't exist on its own. And what I was noticing even last night was it's like we're back and forth as they're falling in love, and it seems to be really related.
Yes, it is. Well, because it's the same, what's going to bring, their love is going to be lived, and their friendship together also, but with this third woman, the servant, is also going to be fulfilled because we share their loneliness. There is no more the eye of the mother, which and they are out of the world, and cinema is this, is the only art where you can share somebody's loneliness, and that's why it's important to to look at this character and share their intimacy, and so we leave the room to sorority and to actually represent sorority, give that experience that is not something you can go through if you're not out of the world, actually. So this utopia is a thread in the love story, because we also want to talk about friendship in a love story. And how sorority actually abolishes social hierarchy, and everything opens up at the movie at that moment. And even the actresses, you can definitely tell they're not acting the same way. It was a milestone and a turning point in their acting, where they opened up. Adele really considers this the moment where she unfroze. Is that a word?
Because there's something very rigid in all that she's carrying, and for good reason. And it's really, in particular, in her performance, it's just there's literally, you can see it in her face. We're so used to studying her face at this point, and it's just this relaxing of almost even facial muscles, and the way she moves in her own body. It almost is like the act of lovemaking is almost like stems from that kind of like what's being drained from her.
Yes, and she it's actually also the first time we get some smiles.
Yeah.
And so it's been an hour and 10 minutes without seeing a woman smiling on the screen. Which is something I really had to fight for, because even though, it was scripted that way and everybody shared the intention of not showing women being, moody, it's not that, but being at what they do, concentrate, and there's no reason to smile.
When you say fight with the actresses, or is this a producerial?
No, with the actresses, no. But with, my assistant director or the script, we were... They knew, but still, when we had a good take, they were like, maybe we can do one with a smile. Because it's, we are conditioned to actually act like that, It's like, they should smile. And I didn't want to do it because they would say, yeah, but maybe you will need this in the editing room. No, I don't want to have this in my machine in the editing room. I don't want to look at it.
I don't want this option. The art of the portrait is something. The art of painting a portrait is something this film kind of really gets into the mechanics of it, and I want to talk about that. But it also feels to me, and once again, please correct me if I'm going down a path that is leading nowhere. But it seems as if it also spurred some, not only the way that we're seeing these women, but also spurred some filmmaking ideas for you, and an exploration of the medium as you're kind of learning how to film. One process, it's kind of this, for me, it became, and maybe I should just speak for myself, I was thinking about film and film's properties and what the human face means in a movie, and I have to imagine that was something that was also kind of driving you as a filmmaker here. Yes,
of course. And there's two there's two paths, because there's the job of there's actually the painting scenes, and mostly also when the model pauses. This is a reflection on portraying in painting, because we actually see the different layers, and they have critical debate over what's a good portrait, and it's about the critical debate that they had at the time that are still true, but is a painting, should you show the best version of somebody, or should it be about who they really are with the default, and is a portrait escaping from death, because you're in eternal, you're fixed at an age, in a state, or is it actually totally morbid? And how do you bring life to a portrait, which is to a face, to an attitude, which is also, of course, a question of cinema. So in this process also, with the scene where she poses and the painting scenes, there was a whole workshop for me around shot and reverse shot, which is something that I didn't practice a lot in my previous film. There are very few reverse shot. And when I started writing this one, I was like, okay, this is it will be a reflection around reverse shot, and knowing that they would be really, really frontal, because that's the dispositive of the painter and of the film. And there's also another reflection going on that doesn't belong exactly to the same. It's not the same level, and that is before she begins to paint. We still, the movie is asking itself, how do you create suspense around discovering a face? How do you look at someone wanting to create an image, but while they are moving and escaping, which is, I think, the question of a filmmaker more than the question of a painter. So we ask ourselves this question for the first 30 minutes of the film, and we find the solutions in cinema, and then we see the painter asking herself these questions and finding her answer in painting. But we ask ourselves the question of the painter, but we find the answers in cinema.
You brought up the reverse shot, and it's interesting because, often you and I are in a conversation right now, and it would be very hard. Either we shoot as profile, or we have to do the reverse shot while we're engaged. And it's the same thing with, often lovers are facing each other, and all kinds of intimacy often happens facing each other. And so it's hard. But you talk about the fact that you need to do reverse shot. But one of the things that blew my mind with this film is one of the hardest things to do in film is to actually do the reverse and get the open, two-face, intimate, two-shot. And you have I watched it last night, and there was 5 at really key moments. And once again, TV can do it with the walk and talk down the New York City street, which is whatever. But you really, it's a hard thing to motivate, and I have to imagine it's something you had to really think about how to get there. But there's really, at these key moments, these 2 women sharing something very intimately, and yet somehow you found a way to motivate it in a natural way where they can share a frame, it could be tight, and we're getting both of their emotions in a frontal way. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, by the way, filmmakers, you try and do this at home, it is very hard. It is very hard to motivate something like that.
Well, I thought a lot, but during the screenwriting process, actually, about how to find the pace and the rhythm and the choreography of how do you put two faces and 2 bodies in the same frame, how is it a big stake? How is it? It's that kind of how it's going to build tension. The fact that at some point they are in the same frame, and even in the process of reverse shots, as the movie progresses, they finally meet. The painter goes into her own. Gaze,
Mm-hmm. When she comes around.
And the movie is all about, the model, the painter first ignoring that she's also being looked at, and finally discovering that might also be an object in the eye of her subject.
Of the subject, right.
So we're being very playful, and also really, I'm always I like it when you see the ideas. I like it when you see that a film is about thinking a lot about film. It's not a way to actually, brag about the fact that you have good ideas or bad. But it's part of my pleasure as a viewer.
Ideas are one thing, but finding a way to effortlessly express them in the medium is a different, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. But I think that's a big part of the job of writing for me is and of just making the film actually is also shooting, and then the whole post-production, really sound design also is really important in that choreography, and because it's about also the rhythm of their steps and so this is sorry, I'm being very messy. I got lost in my but yeah, it should be, we have the pleasure of living the idea and the ideas, and I always dream of the viewer as being somebody who discovers a language. The language is the film, and part of its pleasure, a big part of the pleasure, I think, is getting the language, getting the ideas, and speaking the language of the film in the end, like a new language. And that part of the pleasure is about the anticipation and also the recognition of ideas, and the fact that now your brain is part of the brain of the film. So it must look simple. I think it must look simple to do.
But to have two actresses sharing something so intimately, and to be shoulder to shoulder or like that is, and to give you that sense of that intimacy, but also actually having an openness to the camera is a remarkable piece of work, not only by you but also them, to be able to accomplish that. We were talking about rhythms and you were talking about sounds, and one thing is the breathing and the sound of the lips and the energy that comes from the sound when they are at their closest moment. It's not just purely lovemaking, but also just that sense. You speak of rhythms. You denied yourself music in this to a certain. I mean, except for two killer scenes where it comes in like a like a wave, which I want to talk about. But I mean, it seems as if, which is hard because I guess a music in this type of way can almost dictate an emotion. And if you put any kind of strings or something on that over a love scene, it's going to, I guess, impose a rhythm on it, and you needed to find it internally. Is that the idea here? Yeah,
it's. It's a very early decision to make the film without music. It has to be, because then you have to go through the process of writing, acknowledging this and finding your solution, so that it's not the same rhythm if there's no music, even though, of course, you're not. I mean, when you're writing a film with music, you don't always know where music will be, because there'll be another creator who will have his own ideas about this. So it's not like when you're writing with music, you're leaving the room for music. But it's just that you know that you will have to find the musicality of the film elsewhere, so in the rhythm of the scenes, in the bodies and the movements of the actors, and
you're seeing a lot of that in writing. You're thinking of this in terms of, it sounds, I mean, obviously it's a different thing when the actresses are in the room, but it sounds as if like these are things in that rhythm, and that internal rhythm is something that's very much a part of the writing process for you.
It's something that I'm obsessed about throughout all the steps, so including in writing. And it's really about, and then on the shooting it's about the groove. And we communicate a lot around that with the actresses. Like if they have to move to one another, I would give the number of steps, because that's going to be the rhythm of their approach, and it's not the same. It's 5 or 6 if it's pair, or if it's impair. If it will be totally a different feeling. A different tension, and thinking of making a love story without music is actually was
frightening.
It was really frightening, because every movie, every love story, we know, we think about a lot. I don't know, we think about Titanic, we got the music. We think about Gone with the Wind, we have the music. We think about E.T., we have the music. I mean, it's every love story has its own tune. I think that's our song. So, but I really wanted to it was a matter of reconstitution, as the movie is also talking about the connection with love and art, and how love makes you love art. I wanted the audience to be in the same position as the characters that are frustrated because, you know, they don't have access to beauty in general and to art in particular. So that was to put, the viewer in the same physical condition and frustration regarding music, and so that when it occurs, it's it's something.
Well, let's talk about when it occurs. It's an incredibly powerful scene that I feel like, in and of itself, people that have seen the movies or when they watch the movies, what it means and what almost dead center of the movie, and kind of that merging of the two stories, of the women's story and then and this love story. It's very powerful. But I'm just curious about what I don't know anything about 18th century women that gather for a bonfire and then at night. But what is this music? Was this inspired by something? Is this something? I mean, it's so glorious. It's so beautiful. But I'm also just wondering, where did you come up with that?
I wanted. I listened to. I tried to find an old tune. Maybe to adapt it. I listened to a lot of old melodies from the time. Some of them we're still singing to our kids to they go to bed. But it wasn't. I wanted to be kind of a trance, so I wanted the BPMs to be very high, and didn't find something. It was all very instrumental, and I wanted no instrument. I just wanted the voice and the clapping of women. So we kind of decided to write it, thinking about this, about very, very trepidant BPM and polyphony and polyrhythmy. And we had no, I mean, I wrote the lyrics in Latin.
What are they saying? It's not subtitled, are they?
Yeah, they're saying fugere non possunt, which means they can't fly. Mm-hmm. And it's an adaptation of a sentence by Nietzsche, I think you say here, who says basically, the higher we go, the smaller we look for those who can't fly. So they say an adaptation of that sentence. And it was a way to also convoke the imaginary within witches. In the meantime, saying, well, you know, it's just women gathering, living their friendship, exchanging knowledge about, they're being wise women, doctors, laborious, whatever. And, drinking, and it's cold, so there's a fire. And they might do drugs, so, they fly. And that's witches, and that's what they wanted to burn. And it's more trivial than what we think, but still we wanted to convoke the imaginary around witches.
It's an amazing scene, but also I imagine it's something that was so important to you to have something that kind of transcended that, because it's such an important beat in the love story. Yes. It's a little bit where it's like the line is crossed and it has to be acknowledged, and it seems to be so important to you that also came from the gathering of women and this shared voice and this kind of explosion of trance. Like, it feels as if like it's an incredibly important moment for you that these things are merging and coming out of each other. Yes,
there's a lot of lines that are merging at that moment. There's like there's this group of women, and so there's this big sorority that actually accompanies them and taking the leap of love, and there's also like literally the incarnation of the film. It is very literal. I mean, they are facing one another. There's fire between them, and one of them is gonna be on fire for real. I'm not spoiling because it's the poster. So it's also the moment where the film shows how literal it is, and that we're gonna set fire to so the mise en scène is also totally assuming, totally. It also talks about how there's no special effects. Everything is done. I don't know. You say that.
Practical. You made a fire.
So it's also this idea of cinema, and there's So that scene is a turning point of. Then the movie becomes something else after that.
This is the first time you've worked with. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Cinematographer Claire Mathon. Is that right? And. There's obviously she's supplying you this beautiful natural portrait light for what you're exploring with the portraits. But there also seem, and that in of itself is wonderful. But it also seems as if there is a texture, there's a complexion here that is very conscious and goes beyond just getting a beautiful. Shaping natural light. This seems to be a very conscious choice. It's wonderful work by her, but also I imagine this is something you talked about beforehand because it is a natural portrait light, but there is almost I don't know if I'm wrong, almost a texture of a painting to a certain degree in that naturalness.
Yeah, we began to shoot all the exteriors in Brittany, so very natural light. Of course, we had very few inputs. And that was
no power in this because I imagine that's a real 18th century house.
Yeah, and we went there because we wanted the gray sky and it was very sunny, and we felt it's okay. It's a blessing for the film. It should be luminous. But so that was kind of a matrix of something that we had to bring back to our castle in the Parisian suburb, and we always thought, we have to bring back this lighting, and we have to take it a step further. Shooting in a castle, an ancient one, and that was kind of, didn't really move since the 18th century. Actually, like the color of the walls didn't change, and the everything is. It's a place that hasn't been used and is kind of deserted. So
that's a blessing for something like this,
exactly.
Rather than having to have some production designer do like 18 layers of paint and.
Exactly, and we visited a lot of castles where people get married. So that was a place where nobody lived for a long time, and but the thing is, you couldn't put any lighting up there. It all had to be on the ground. And so we decided to put it out of the room, and it was a big production decision because the movie is cheap. It has a low key budget regarding also the period piece, and that was a decision because we didn't want to make any compromise, and that's also the way we work. But we decided to put a lot of money and time in building this gigantic thing outside of the castle, this platform, where there would be a lot of lighting, and we would really lighten the scenes from the windows, not having a sense of the fact that I couldn't see the how do you call that, the projector, the lights. Mm-hmm. But it felt like a kind of magic. Actually, you didn't see anything. There was no light in the room, but it was so accurate. And what we gave ourselves is this, and also time. And the lighting took a lot of time, which is a difficult decision because then you have less time to actually shoot the scene. But I'm not doing much takes, and and it's not very. There's very few. There's a lot of long takes, and
there's not a lot of setups. You're not having to switch. You're getting it often with one setup and one angle.
Exactly, but still, it's she could work very, very, very precisely with a lot of lights, and
because each scene has, even though the portraits and stuff, there's a natural light, there's the firelight, there's the but each one just has such a specific texture, almost as if she's playing like the emotional note of the scene, and it's so dialed in a way. I love natural light, but you can't do that if the sun's just coming in the window or whatnot, and it seems so predetermined as to what that light is going to be.
Yes, and it's very different from the day and the nights. The nights were all about putting lights in the room and inventing ways to candlelit without any candles actually being in the frame, which is a decision you have to take when you're doing a period piece. I think it's the big decision. What are you doing with the candles? Is there somebody holding them? Is there you can definitely look at period pieces and see the different choices, and Kubrick has figured it out, as always. But it was a totally different process, and night shots are mostly long takes with dollies, and so it was very, very, also very accurate, and lights, little things everywhere, and we were surrounded by the lights when you couldn't move, with very weird objects that you make up for your own film. So this is very, very different. But one thing that we had, a reflection that we had, is that we wanted the light to come. We were very obsessed with the fact that with the characters within the light. And how to their complexion, their carnation, that was mostly what we were obsessed about, and how the light would, how they would not be restrained by beauty, but how the light would seem to come up of the character. So it's a lot about how they are lightened up, and it's also work we did with the costume designer regarding the colors, and. Yeah, I don't know. And this sentence has no ending.
Am I right here? The process of the actual portrait is one, you went and found an artist that was the age of these women, and my sense, and it wasn't 100% clear to me, but that the process was paralleled the film. Rather than beforehand, I think the normal way to do this would be in pre-production, we're going to figure out the different stages and we got them. It almost seems as if this young artist was paralleling the journey of the characters. Am I wrong about that?
Well, you're wrong and you're right. Okay. It's both. Of course, we had to do it in preparation, because the thing about the paintings is that, we had to figure out the style of the painter, and we had to, she had never done an 18th century painting. She's more, her style is close to, and education is it's much more 19th century, which is totally different. And we had she's doing two different portraits in the film, and yet they have to be different, but not dumb and different, like one is bad and one is good, so there's to be, so we had to work a lot around those choices. And with Adele posing and Hélène Delmer, the painter, really trying to figure out what was going to be the style of the painter. But then she was always on the set, because she had to paint 12 different paintings that are the different stages. And we wanted to shoot the painting in real time. I didn't want to time lapse anything, or edit it. So we had to pick, and that was pre-production decision, very accurate, precise moment of painting, so that they would be in the right swing and the right rhythm, true to the painter's rhythm, and interesting for the viewer, and also symbolic of different layers that I'm interested in showing. That was the hardest job. Frankly, there's very few films where they invent a painter, or maybe a contemporary one, which is more, it's easier to invent a Jackson Pollock than a Vincent van Gogh. And I understand why. It's really it was the thing I was totally naive about. This is gonna be fine. No, that was very, very difficult. And she always was, the painter was like a ghost on the set. She was wearing the same dress as the character, and would look at the scenes, and then would come and give her advice, and then at some point would paint for 20 minutes, as in and she basically lived in this castle and painted all day.
That's it. One last thing. You had said, I just want to make sure I get this right. You want this, obviously this film, one of the things that's wonderful about this film is that it does capture that feeling of falling in love, which is a very immediate feeling. But you also said something of, I wanted the story of the echo of a love in that sense. And the story is structured in this way. It's got a very, one of the things, it's melancholy. And I imagine this is something that you carried in from that early research. It's going to end, and I think even early on, even that decision of, do you want me to resist, is kind of put out on the table. So, I mean, there is a structuring device here, but there is that, it seems as if, and that's a tricky thing, of kind of working with like a dual temporality here, of a sense that this is over while it's also happening.
Yeah, that was, I wanted to tell both. I wanted to make this patient chronicle of the rise of desire. I also really wanted to film desire that becomes love, and to be very accurate and in the present of that. And but also wanted to tell about the what's left, the memory of a love story, the dynamic of a love story when it's over. And also to bring new imaginary to this and get out of like eternal love and possession and to talk about how there's this sentence from this American poet who passed away last year named Mary Oliver, who says, like, well, that's a poem, I'm not going to quote the whole poem, but the idea is that like a broken heart is an open heart to the rest of the world, and how lost love is about the dynamic of love as being a curation for new curiosity, new loves, and also a love for the art, and art being consoling, but also makes us better lovers, and that was, I wanted to look at this love as something possible and not something impossible, and get out of old conflicts and old negotiation, and to have this new culture, like a counterculture of a love story.
It is a wonderful film, and thank you so much for this. And I've already seen it twice, and it's already just rewarded me on the second time. It's and all these things that I want to go back and watch it a third time for some of these ideas that are in here and then are baked into the filmmaking. It's really, I've always enjoyed your work. So it's not a diss on Tomboy and Girlhood. Love those films, but I mean, this is really a remarkable piece. So congratulations.
Thank you.